Hey y'all,
Hey y'all,
we're back.
episode 2.
We did that, huh?
We did that.
Cheers to that.
Doing it.
Doing it. Welcome to RealTea. I am Serenity,
I'm Nia.
and we are here to chat with y'all about real shiz,
Real life.
real things
Yes.
in the workplace, in the life place, and we have tips today specifically about tech.
Yes.
And
I'm
what it means.
so excited to dive into tech today. So
Yeah, so
let's get into it.
So today we're really starting our life lately with what it means to be vulnerable.
Vulnerability.
Like, what is the true, not necessarily the true definition, right? Because nobody wants a definition all the time about something, but like, what does it mean to be vulnerable? What is that?
Specifically, like vulnerability in relationships, whether it be romantic or just platonic, but what it means to be vulnerable, to open yourself up to somebody, and is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? And that's what we want to talk about today in our personal lives, personal
Yeah.
experiences, how we've dealt with vulnerability and our perspective on it.
Yeah, and more than just perspective too, because I don't want to sit here and be like, I'm the queen of advice, right? Like, I can't tell people if I'm still going through things, it's like,
Right.
who am I to really say this is what you should and shouldn't do?
Right.
The most that I can do is say, this is how I'm functioning.
How I deal with it.
And creating a new lane for myself within the world of vulnerability. And to be vulnerable, I didn't even really know what the definition was until we looked it up the other day.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is the unpleasant emotions. So what's an unpleasant emotion?
Sadness,
Anger,
fear,
embarrassment, shame, guilt, right? And it's just like, damn, that sounds ugly. Like, who would want to share anything like that? But I think it comes with the relationships, not even just romantically, right? It comes with the relationship. How can you be vulnerable without being seen as weak?
And so I think for me, like, why vulnerability kind of gets like a negative connotation is because it has like that element of like, well, if I open myself up, I could potentially get hurt. I could potentially get attacked. But for me, I always look at vulnerability as like a superpower because I think it takes a lot of strength and a lot of courage to deal with stuff that is hard, like those hard emotions that you talked about. I think it takes a lot of just resilience to deal with those things and face them head on. And I think the like difficult part that people run into when they deal with vulnerability is avoidance and trying to like go around those things because they are hard to deal with. But I always think of it as like all of those emotions, whether they're good or bad, they're a part of the human experience, and it's just how we survive. So you have to find your strength in being vulnerable, and you have to deal with those things, head on so that you can thrive.
Yeah, I agree. I think the hardest part about vulnerability is just like the hurt part. It's just like, well, if I say this to you, it's like pillow talking. Like when people talk about people that pillow talk and like even with they say Rick Ross pillow talk to somebody or with these, like everybody's a pillow talker. And then that's how somebody's business gets out. These are moments where people felt vulnerable.
Wait, like Twitter fingers?
No, well, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say Twitter fingers. I would say more like beef, right? Like when you look at the beef,
child.
right? And this is based off vulnerability because in some way, shape, or form, these facts are being shared with somebody, and it's like now hurting them in such an intense way. Like Mr. Drake has been quiet, bro. Like Mr. Drake hasn't had much to say because the pillow talk, whether it's his people sharing the information, false information, whatever the case may be, people are sitting there like, damn, like I'm hurt because this is something that I didn't want nobody to know about. And because I shared it with somebody, it is now the world's business. And if we put it back to like our personal relationships, like with our family or friends or partners, these people feel the same way too. And it's like, but damn, I trusted you. Like, How could you take a word and that I said to you and then it becomes trauma? Because you taking what somebody else did, right? Like somebody else made you feel uncomfortable and now me and you can't have a trust because somebody else made you feel uncomfortable. And you're dealing with the fact that you were vulnerable with them, but you now cannot be vulnerable with this new person.
So what do we think is like the good thing about being vulnerable though?
I think the good thing about it is the fact that it shows that you are real.
Bingo. Genuine, you're human.
This girl, I could cry. That's for sure. I could definitely drop some tears. If y'all say anything emotional, if y'all say something about my sisters or like, I love them so much. Oh my God, I'm gonna start crying. Like I'm a crybaby, right? So like, the beauty of vulnerability is just the type of love that comes from it. Like, it's definitely a risky thing, but it's so much real love that comes from and real care. It not necessarily have to be love all the time, but now you have true interest in what you're doing or what you're saying because you had the balls to be like, yo,
Right.
this is making me feel this way because I once dealt with something that made me feel small, and this situation is making me feel small. If you don't have the power to say that, then you're going to always feel small, and in turn, it's going to have a buildup, and then your relationship is going to be crap with whoever the person is.
I think too, like not even just with like external relationships that you have, like with other people. I think vulnerability is important to have, you know, with the relationship that you have with yourself. Because to go off of what you said as far as just like vulnerability being a superpower, because it allows you to be real, it also allows you to be real with yourself. And when you're not real with yourself, then things can go downhill. So yeah, I think it's an important thing to.
Oh, girl, you just hit a nerve.
I think it's an important thing to hone, not only like in relationships that you have with other people, but the relationship that you have with yourself, the most important one. So
I can attest. My most recent Instagram post. Like, I don't know if you saw it yet or not, but
I haven't been on Instagram. Sorry.
I did the post about my 32nd birthday.
Oh yes, okay, I did see that. Happy belated, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. 32, right? I'm now 32 years old, and the happiness that I felt this year, I didn't know I was going to feel it because I was expecting so much more from people who I loved in my life, people who I thought would be there for me. A lot of people that I really wanted to call me and be there for me did not call me, did not show no love at all. And then I was just like, do I want to be upset about this, or do I want to just be real with myself and love on myself and say, Serenity, this is making you feel sad. Why is it making you feel sad? How do you grow from this sadness right now? And the way I grew from the sadness, this is 32. That was my growth. This is where I am in life right now. I'm 32 years old. I'm happy. God is blessing me left and right, regardless of any negative. I'm in a strong position in my personal life. Things are not going to ever be perfect. So yeah, like all of those realizations, you know, just to slow it down, because I could really go on that forever. But just to slow that down is like, self-realization is very important because it also impacts the way you deal with it in work.
It sure does. Yeah. And I think even more so in professional settings, vulnerability gets an even more negative connotation because you're supposed to have this type of armor or type of like mask when you're dealing with coworkers or if you're in a business environment or situation. And, you know, it sucks because it makes you feel like you can't be yourself. You can't be real in those type of spaces. Just especially as a woman, I don't know about you, but just, you know, having to have a level of like protection for yourself, because if you do come off too emotional or too bitchy, then you get that look, you get that idea or perception to everybody that you work with that you're like difficult.
Listen, since we talking about work, Because let's remember, I am a woman, 1000% woman, sensitive AF. Truly in my nature to be a sensitive woman, okay? I'm okay with that.
And we're not saying all women are sensitive.
I'm saying Serenity,
Serenity
Nitty, the unicorn
is.
girl, yeah.
And that's beautiful.
Yeah, I'm gonna cry. So, my contractors know that I can cry. And you know why I messed up with that? And that's the whole balance thing of it, because it's like, all right, stuff is starting to really turn left with the way my renovations are going. Had to fire a contractor. And this is we're going to talk about this next week, but I had to fire a contractor because he was playing in my face because I let him in too much.
Like you let him get too personal?
I let him in way too much.
Okay.
Like, and the reason why is because I started flipping 3 years ago. 3.5 years ago, I'm like, yeah, this is great. He came in, saved the day from another bad contractor. So there's this level of comfortability that came along with our relationship. He's a black man. I'm a black woman. We building an empire. I ain't never made 6 figures. Now I'm making almost a lot.
Don't be counting her pockets.
Right. That's why I said almost a lot, right? But like, I'm now making this money. He knows it. He knows that we have powerful clients that we can continue to grow. But my approach was, hey, bro, let's build. Hey, bro, this is great. Showing him he knows my family. He knows, different aspects of everything. But the whole time this man was playing in my face and my vulnerability kicked in negatively when I let him see me cry. Because I was overwhelmed. I was stressed out. What am I going to do? Like, how could you do this to me? This isn't cool. And the one thing he said to me is, why are you being so emotional? You smoking crack?
Ugh, what a douchebag. You're stupid.
But in the instance of it being said to me, it's like, oh, so I have to be a man now. I have to show a different level of strength now, because me showing any level of weakness means that I'm a woman again. You know what I'm saying? And
or
it's
like that connection of like being a woman or showing like any type of traditionally classified feminine emotions classifies you as weak.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying.
And it's like, now, it's like sometimes even contractors are like, all right, like, I don't want you to get overwhelmed. So I'm like, pause. First of all, me expressing that negative things have happened with my contractors does not mean I'm overwhelmed or weak. It means that I'm telling you exactly what happened. So this vulnerability that I'm sharing with you in the workplace is so that you know exactly what I'm not going to tolerate again. But as women, they take it as, nah, you just being weak. Like, this is why women shouldn't be in construction. This is why women shouldn't. Boy, kiss my ass.
We need to be at home.
I can be whatever I want to be in.
They think we need to be at home cooking dinner.
I like doing that too sometimes.
I do too, but I'm also
at it.
smart. But yeah, no, I feel you. Like, it's crazy because to me, I would take that as somebody showing that type of vulnerability or level of vulnerability as like, you're passionate about what you do. That's passion. And you care about what you do. And there's nothing wrong with that. But like for me personally, when I'm at work, I always find myself like, before I'm sending an email to somebody or a Slack to somebody, I always find myself being like, oh, let me add an LOL at the end of that sentence or exclamation point or a smiley face, because I don't want to come off too, you know what I'm saying, too aggressive, or I don't want to seem like I'm being too emotional or bitchy and stuff like that. So it's just so crazy to me that we have to literally like do this type of like, I guess, code switching. I don't know if that's the right word for it.
The question is,
it's not race, but it's like, it's something that you have to do to like guard being too emotional when you're at work.
It's like, why do we glorify it in relationships but look down on it in business? Because it's like, at the end of the day, we're still human, and each and every part of whatever you do, professionally, romantically, even with the way you work out, like everything you do, there's a balance to the stuff that you do. So why is it okay for me to be, even with men, they really put that on men heavy, like men should be more vulnerable, and which is like true, yes. But when women do it in a workplace, it's like, we could be vulnerable in our relationship because they expect that from women, to be softer, to be the emotional backbone,
Right.
to be the provider, the
Doing
caretaker.
the emotional labor multiple
Yeah.
times.
And they're like the fierceness and the logic and
provider.
yeah, the girl, right? So when it comes to being in the workplace, it's like, damn, so I could be vulnerable at home, but in the workplace, I'm weak because of it. I'm not
And
equal.
maybe it's because it's like there's a difference between, which is like duh, like obviously there's a difference between like how you behave when you're at home versus how you behave when you're at work. So maybe that's what it is. But I just feel like for me personally, like I plan to always show up as myself. Like obviously, like when I am outside of personal spaces, I do have to have a level of just like, okay, reserve, I guess. But my goal, and I hope this is y'all goal too, just show up as yourself. Be real with yourself. Be real with, you know, how you deal with your emotions, how you internalize things, and find healthy releases. Because to me, it just makes you an overall happier person.
And have grace. Like
for yourself and for other people.
Learn
yes.
and learn the balance, which is what I'm learning.
That's
right.
The word.
Like that's the goal, right? Let's say goals instead of my advice is. Our goals are to learn the balance. Like, what is a healthy balance of being vulnerable and showing strength? Like, how do we make sure that levels out every single time? And that way we become balanced human beings.
Right.
Like, there are people who walk outside every day smiling and and how you doings, right? And then you got people on the other side who just look like their whole world is just over. How do we find a balance in between that? Because that person who look like their world is over that's true vulnerability that they're showing you outwardly without even knowing you. It's something wrong with you.
And
are
honestly,
you okay? And it's like, yes, we should be able to ask.
Right.
But also, where's our balance to say, because they might just walk it off like, don't talk to me. Right. Instead of saying, I'm hurting, I need help.
And honestly, like, I feel like finding that balance that you just talked about, like the balance between being vulnerable, being emotional versus like having somewhat of a poker face, I guess, like in different environments or showing some type of strength. I think that comes from understanding your values and who you are as a person. Like being able to establish that balance really comes from knowing who you are. So start there, I would say.
Look, we've been vulnerable today. Is everybody's hearts lifted a little bit? Just a little bit of...
Speaking of vulnerability, I have felt a like positive sense of vulnerability in digital spaces. One in particular, Twitter, Black Twitter.
You know,
I love Black
that's
Twitter.
True.
R.I.P. What is X? What is X?
X'd out.
X'd out. Anyways.
I used to be on Twitter real heavy. Like, that was really...
It was amazing.
Even before the name change, I used to be on there. But then I thought Twitter started getting too dangerous and toxic because of the way, like, young people...
Social media.
Yeah, like, it just started hurting my heart to see how people talk to each other. But then there was still a nice side of it to where your expression was so powerful on there. Like, you could say anything and not feel judged by it because... And that's when it was more directed at just like, this is just how I feel about a situation versus saying, you suck, right? Like, it was a balance of like happiness within expression. Mm-hmm. And then it kind of...
humor and wit and, you know, community and conversation about Blackness and Black culture and everything that we went through with the Black Lives Matter movement. And all of these things are touched on in the documentary by showrunner. What is his name from Insecure?
Lauren's name?
No, the show. Prentice Penny.
Who was that?
Yeah. He's a showrunner from... No, he was a showrunner. So he was like behind the scenes.
I say Lawrence because Lawrence was cool.
No, not Lawrence.
Okay.
Yeah, so he did a documentary on Hulu. It's called We the People, History of Black Twitter. And it was phenomenal. I recommend everybody check it out. But just going off of what Serenity said as far as like the prime of Twitter and Black Twitter and how we kind of like influence pop culture and everything like that, it's talked about in the documentary. And the reason why I bring this up, you know, to kind of go off of vulnerability is for this segment, we wanted to talk about tech. For those of you that don't know, I work in tech. I'm a marketing operations specialist for a software as a service company based in Chicago. And we wanted to talk about it a little bit.
We wanted to talk about all that SaaS.
All that SaaS.
SaaS, to be exact.
Software as a service. Just because we feel like tech is such a like blanket term that a lot of people don't really know what it means and like if and how they can get involved. So I just want to give a disclaimer before we start this conversation. This is mostly like based from my personal experience. So if there's anything like factual wise that you want to check out for yourself, please feel free to do that. But we're going to get into it.
Yes. So the biggest thing for me with learning about like the tech world is feeling like I'm not involved in it.
Okay.
And
like barriers to entry.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know what tech is for real. How do I get a job that pays 6 figures in tech? I don't think I'm capable. That doesn't even sound right. I have to go to school for this degree or this trade or this, that, right? So like for me, and even not even knowing what the hell SaaS meant, I was like, oh shit, that's what it meant this whole time?
Software as a service.
I never knew that. So it's like even like the small things that of course we can Google.
Right.
The overwhelming feeling of having to Google it is what stops me from even wanting to involve myself and feeling like I'm capable of that career. So what does it take really to begin the involvement into tech?
So I love that you bring up like the fact that you feel like you're not empowered enough to be involved in that space, because I think it's false. I think that technology shapes so much of our everyday lives that alone gives us the agency to be able to like advocate for ourselves in these spaces. So I did just want to say that. But okay, tech to me, as like a blanket term, it kind of breaks down to 3 different things. So you can have a STEM background, meaning you went to school or you have some type of like certification in science, technology, engineering, or mathematics. So that's one part of it. The second part of it is you can work for a software as a service company, which means that basically like the company that you work for, their product is a software. So like the company I work for, we sell software. Or number 3, it can be both. You can have a STEM background and you can also work for a software as a service company. So like you can be an engineer or work in IT, you know, at that type of company. So I would say like I'm kind of like in the middle of like STEM-ish and also working for a software as a service company, because I do work with technology, specifically marketing technology. So basically, like what we do is we help assist our sales teams meet their sales goals by bringing them in leads. And you have to do that digitally. Like that's like the main way that we get people into our database.
Are we really involved in technology though? Like, let's say me and I say, hey, today I want to start my career in the tech field.
Okay.
What is a good starting place for somebody? Because I remember we were chatting, you were just like, well, Serenity, you use social media every day. That is somewhat working in tech,
literally
right?
like a social media branding guru. And you know how to like edit.
Girl,
no, seriously.
stop.
You be doing your thing. You be doing your big one. And you know how to use like I forget, what is it, Premiere? You know how to use those types of software to like edit video content. That's working in tech pretty much, you know? So if you wanted to go into business to do stuff like that on your own, or if you wanted to go work for a company to do something like that, you most definitely can. I think that the misconceptions just come from a lack of like people doing their research. Look, he got his hand raised. Boy, this ain't a Q&A. I just playing. No, it could be.
Would you start a tech business?
Would I start one?
Yeah.
No, because I'm not an engineer. I don't know how to build software. I don't. Now, one thing I will say is I'm good at learning how to use technology because I'm a millennial. We grew up with it. We grew up with the internet. You know what I'm saying? So like all of those things to me are not intimidating to learn.
So
like,
that's what you mean by saying in the tech lane, it does not have to, because to me, a tech person who works in tech knows how to code. They know how to do HTML, this, that,
I know
the
how
third.
to baby do that stuff.
But you're saying you don't even have to know how to do that to work in the tech sector.
Even if you wanted to work for a software as a service company, you could work in human resources. You could work, in the training and certifications department if they have one. They have one at my job. So you can work in tech for a company. You don't have to necessarily be an engineer or like a software developer or anything like that. No.
So basically, research is king.
Absolutely.
Because, and I think
in anything that you do in your career.
Yeah, like even within like the marketing I do for real estate on the internet, like using CRM, right? That's a form of technology, right? Yeah. Because I have to pipeline and funnel and stuff that I in the beginning. Not even, let me stop lying. Not the beginning. Just 6 months ago.
I'm glad you caught that lie.
Yeah, because just 6 months ago, I was not fucking with it. I was not trying to do no proper CRM because I'm like, I know how to kind of do this. Like, I don't need to dive. But when I started diving, I was just like, oh my goodness. One funnel dives into the next funnel, dives into the next funnel. And now people calling me from my website. People are visiting my Google for real. Like, I know SEO, right? Like, okay, they're going to visit it because I put a cool post.
Yeah.
But now those SEO posts are going into the CRM, into the whatever. And I'm like, goodness gracious, I am a technology superstar.
But honestly, though, like, that's why I think it's so important for people to realize, like, people like freaking Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk, who are all terrible people, by the way, they should not have to be, like, the ones who are in charge of making these decisions around how we utilize technology just because they have a certain background in tech.
And we should use more Black apps that are created.
We should, but my point is that, like, you should feel just as empowered to understand and be a part of this world just as much as somebody like that, because you use it every single day. It impacts your life every single day. So that's, if you don't take anything from this conversation but that is like my goal. That's the T. And, also, like you said, doing your research, just going online. If you're interested about getting into any type of field, going online and doing your research and figuring out, like, okay, where is my lane and where could I potentially fit into this lane based on the skills that I have, or what can I do to obtain these skills? Like, those are all things that you can do to get involved. So.
That's true, because research is king, and that's how I became, I would say, a versed realtor, because we learn what we learn in class, but then when you're actually getting knocked into these situations, I have to get on the internet to look up questions. Then guess what that prompts me to do? Actually call law offices, call judges, call paralegals, because your network is really the net worth. Like, these are people who might be bored at work just sitting there waiting for the next case to come through as a paralegal. But if you call them and say, hey, I was looking over a file from one of my real estate, and I just wanted to know a little bit more about how title search works. Can you tell me if someone passed away, and how would I know that it was publicized? Oh, well, if you look at the timeline, this is going to tell you exactly the date that it was sent to the public, and if nobody responded, you can get title insurance. And I'm like, oh, how come the title company didn't know that, right? But no, we'll get on them another day. But take initiative to really
figure things out. And I will say too, like, so I kind of like fell into this. This was not something that I like went into being like, oh my God, like I know what I want to do with my life. Like, absolutely no. I was working for a nonprofit, a racist nonprofit. I hate them so much. But I was working for a nonprofit in communications and then in marketing. And I was just researching like different programs because I wanted to go back to school and change my career path. So I was researching different programs, and I knew I wanted to go back to school specifically for communications. But I saw DePaul, shout out to DePaul University. I saw they had a digital communications program, and that's when I was like, that's what I want to do. And it just, from there kind of like snowballed into like where I am now. But I will say, like, when I was in my program, one thing that I really did, kind of to go off of what you just said as far as like calling and taking initiative, every professor that I had, I made sure I was like, I need your network. Who are your friends who work in the industry that I want to work in? I need their LinkedIns. I need their numbers. I need to do informational interviews with all of them. And that's what I did. So like, it's really like a grassroots effort, for anything that you want to get involved in. You have to take initiative. You have to do the research, and you have to reach out to people and not be afraid to do that. So.
And with that, I do want to give a big shout out to, our audience, because y'all make it worth it for sure to be able to build and grow with y'all. And a special shout out, of course, to the home of the RealTea podcast, the Hyper Clubhouse, sponsored by Comedy Hype, and our sponsor that means the most, our lender, the Concierge Pro, the Concierge Team, the Lending Pros, the Girl Dad Lender, everything you want to call them. When you need a deal done and you need somebody with experience and knowledge, I highly recommend the Concierge Team, because they make it a priority to have you understand the ins and outs of every transaction, whether it's residential, commercial, hard money, private money, whatever it is. Even if you want to go into land acquisition, telling you the proper ways to purchase land, there's not one thing that you won't get from these lenders that won't be real, because we only sip RealTea around here when it comes to RealTea.
That part.
And with that, we are grateful for y'all being a part of episode 2.
This was such a good conversation.
It was a great conversation, and be sure to shop the brands. The RealTea brand, coffee is for closers. We drink RealTea. The Ha hemp tea is also really good and good for anxiety when the body's feeling tight and annoyed from a long work day in tech or real estate.
Ooh, child.
Because the Lord be knowing. There's too much going on. Jesus, I need some tea right now. But Ha hemp tea for sure is very delicious, very, very good. And shouts out to Brooklyn Tea as well, a Black-owned tea company, delicious flavors, very local and very fair priced as well. So we have a great team behind us making these shows possible, and we are glad to be able to give y'all some real tea. So sip, sip.
Sip, sip. Thanks, guys.